looks like it's time to take out the trash.
That's what happens when you're watching episode 3 of the all-new Mighty Morphin Zyurangers. The Zyurangers' weapons were destroyed in the battle against Dora's skeleton, and no replacements hold up. Fortunately, an ancient tome tells them of a set of 5 legendary weapons that just so happen to correspond to their 5 weapon skill sets. Unfortunately, they're located in the Land of Despair, filled with mirages, traps, and mazes. On top of that, experiencing sadness or lingering for longer than 24 hours without finding the weapons will cause wanderers to turn to stone. Bondora is determined to make that happen. Not only does she bolster the defenses with Gryphozar, a legion of golems, and a new monster, Dora Minotaur, but she imprisons a young boy and his mother there too, who likewise must be rescued before they turn to stone. It's going to be a long, arduous quest filled with peril and trials that the Zyurangers must overcome before they can lay claim to their weapons. Over on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Rita sends down a Minotaur. They fight the Minotaur, Zordon gives them some weapons, and they beat the Minotaur. Also, pollution is bad. Zyuranger wins! Thanks for watching! Please like, comment, and say, okay, fine, I can do better than that, but come on! This is such a ridiculous downgrade it shocks even me! Let me be clear about something. I consider myself neither a Power Rangers fan nor a Sentai fan. Oh, I was a huge Mighty Morphin Power Rangers fan. In 1993, when I was 7, it will always hold a special place in my heart. But I have not watched a lot of this stuff since Bill Clinton was president, and it's likewise been 10 years at this point since I watched Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger. Despite my saying in the videos I made then that I like Zyuranger better, I don't really have a horse in this race. There's no agenda I'm trying to push, I'm just having fun. I'm going into this as cold as I possibly can. I purposely tried to create scoring categories that could give both shows a fighting chance, and I'm choosing to watch Power Rangers first so that I don't have any preconceived notions of how this footage is supposed to be used. But after I'd watched the corresponding Zyuranger episodes, my jaw was practically on the floor due to how much wasted potential there was here. And yes, I said episodes. This is the second time Power Rangers has had to handle a two-parter. As we saw in the case of the last 2 episodes, they decided to sever any linking narrative threads between them and adapt them as individual standalone episodes. In this case, MMPR takes a different approach. They condense 2 episodes into 1. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that or that it is impossible to create something good that way, but a double length has more time to flesh out its plot. That said, I will not concede that that makes it unfair to pit a single Power Rangers episode against 2 Zyuranger episodes. The purpose of this series is to compare how they handle the same footage. Power Rangers chose to condense this into 1 episode, so there's really nothing else I can do about it. Teamwork works well enough as a standalone episode, certainly better than High Five, but you get the feeling that Zyuranger's trying to do something really special here. In Power Rangers, it's just business as usual. So let me get to my business as usual. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to collectively call the Zyuranger episodes Land of Despair, since that's where they both take place. Land of Despair sees the Zyurangers engage on an epic quest to rebuild their arsenal. From what I do know about these franchises, this is fairly standard production value. Go film in a quarry, throw in some chintzy model work and bad process shots. It's epic storytelling on a children's television budget. It's cheesy and ridiculous, and I absolutely love it. This reminds me of old Doctor Who episodes. Maybe it's because I'm of that era, but I find this kind of look extremely ingratiating. There's something pure that speaks to the imagination of a child in taking relatively generic locations and claiming with absolute sincerity that this is a mystical, magical land. And there's just enough to this concept that I am totally willing to buy into it and overlook the aspects of the story that don't exactly work. There are so many fun, bizarre traps here. A thirsty Don falls for a mirage and falls off a cliff because of it. The paths magically loop back on each other, and I'll be honest, at first I thought they were just being cheap and filming 2 scenes in the exact same spot. They break through invisible walls and confront a door with 2 different doorknobs, each of which goes to a different location. There's an evil sword that turns anyone who touches it into this ridiculous monster that attacks his friends. The place is littered with the statue remains of those who had come here previously and failed. Bookbach tracks their progress with this amazing spooky clock. Dora Minotaur's hands popping out of the ground and grabbing Dawn is so cool. The whole quest caps off with a stone-footed Geki pleading to a bunch of weapons. Something that even Bondora thinks is ridiculous, but totally works. And for the majority of the quest, the heroes are divided. Geki, Goshi, and Dawn head off to find the weapons, while Boy and May search for the missing kid, Hiroshi. That's the whole reason Bondora throws Hiroshi and his mom down there in the first place, to divide and conquer. And she succeeds in stalling them long enough that they begin to turn to stone. It's only Geki's Hail Mary monologue about justice that calls the weapons to them anyway. There are some holes here that they hope you don't notice. The rules of this place are a little vague. Barza tells the Zyurangers that those who possess magic will be set aflame if they try to touch the weapons. I assume this is supposed to explain why Bondora doesn't simply steal the weapons herself, since she seems able to flit around this place without any problem. In fact, she seems so powerful in this story that it makes you wonder where all that goes in future episodes. But why is it that she and her minions can enter and exit this place as they please without being subject to the same curse? If Hiroshi's mother has been in the Land of Despair longer than the Zyurangers, yet they find her only after their own time limit is up, how come she hasn't turned to stone? Why is it that Hiroshi's tears activate the curse and turn him to stone, yet his mother's tears do the exact opposite and turn him back? As an aside, I don't believe any idea is inherently bad, but if the resolution of your plot hinges on magic tears, just go back and do a second draft, see if you can think of anything else. Especially if you've already established that tears are bad. None of this is quite enough to ruin my enjoyment, but it does indicate that they were somewhat writing down to their audience, hoping kids wouldn't notice. In a way, I can see why Power Rangers condensed this into a single episode. The Zyurangers remain untransformed for the majority of this two-parter. There's not a lot of footage they could actually use. I've seen enough history of Power Rangers to know that this franchise is no stranger to magic tears. I've also seen enough history of Power Rangers to know that after they'd gotten some experience, and budget, under their belts, Power Rangers could have adapted this plot into something completely on par with its Sentai counterpart. But they're not on that level yet. So what does teamwork provide? Well, it replaces the epic quest with a message about pollution being bad. What kind of pollution? I don't know, but it's bad. What's causing the pollution? I don't know, but it's bad. Trini and Kimberly are circulating a petition to shut down a waste dump, or get the owners to clean it up, I'm not sure, they say both at various points. And then they're just gonna go down to the dump and hand their clipboard to, I guess, a random minimum wage worker who has no control over anything. Not that any of it matters, because it turns out that Rita owns it? How? Why? Not that any of that matters, because it's only brought up once, the Rangers never find out about it, and they never accomplish anything in regards to it. All of this is here because the girls need to be in a place where they can be attacked, and we've done the desert the last 2 episodes in a row. This does serve as a more visually striking location. Rita creates a Minotaur because... it works, I guess. The connection in Zyuranger is obvious. It's not the traditional form, but the Zyurangers are navigating a labyrinth. Therefore, Bondora creates a Minotaur. Unlike High Five, the title plot is actually somewhat motivated by the Sentai footage and not completely random. They take the idea of the characters being separated and use that to push a message that they need to use teamwork. They get their weapons, not through any kind of quest or challenge, but simply because Zordon passes them out at the end. But they get their weapons and bring all 5 of them together in order to defeat the enemy. So they learned about teamwork, because it's not as if they've ever brought 5 devices together before or anything. It's not completely out of left field, but the script does its best to undermine its own moral. I feel like we're supposed to think the boys are in the wrong because they don't go with the girls to deliver the petition. If they'd worked together as a team, things would have been better. But while the actors play it as if they're just trying to get out of something they'd rather not do, they all have legitimate excuses. Jason has to teach a karate class, Billy has a science club meeting, Alpha asks Zach to come to the command center. So they're in the wrong because they have prior engagements and responsibilities they don't want to shirk in favor of this last-minute request that doesn't require their presence? When the situation does go south, Jason and Billy immediately join Zach in the command center to help out. But then it's Zordon who prevents them from acting like a team. Go help your friends. Oh, wait, there's a Minotaur. I've always wanted to see one of those. Screw your friends, go fight the Minotaur. It's ultimately up to the Power Rangers to reunite with each other, which they clearly would have done anyway had reasonable circumstances not kept them apart. So there's not really a lesson to take away from this. Teamwork is good! Yeah, we already knew that. The bizarre thing about Land of Despair is that while it puts the heroes through such suffering to get their weapons, it goes the complete opposite direction with their guardian beasts. Last time, the Tyrannosaurus appeared to Geki when they were in trouble. Now Bars is yelling at them, "Hey, summon your guardian beasts already!" So we get all 5 of them. As much as I love the weapons, I feel the guardian beasts are more important. So having them enter the story as a subplot while the weapons are the focus of this epic 2-parter doesn't sit right with me. If there could only be one story like this, it should have been the Zyurangers going on a quest to unlock the remaining mechs. But there is a good Arthurian bent to swords and stones, so I say, why not do both? But either way, the Guardian Beasts deserve more than this. Outside of their haphazard introduction, they do provide good action. This is one of the few times we're going to see these individual robots show off their powers. Since they're models instead of actors in suits like the Tyrannosaurus, the effects for them are limited. Usually the individual pieces only exist to form the giant robot. There is no combined robot yet, so I'll enjoy this while it lasts. Interestingly, this is the first time Bandora makes one of her monsters grow with her staff, something Power Rangers showed off in the first episode due to its use of later footage. Dora Skeleton never grows, and Dora Titan seems to be naturally that tall. But since the whole robot fight section isn't the main point of these episodes, it has to end without reaching a conclusion. So Bandora recalls Dora Minotaur when night falls because the nights in the Land of Despair are exceptionally cold. Well, nice to see that Bandora cares about the well-being of her employees, and it provides a beat for the Zyurangers to reflect on the task ahead and the failures they've suffered. The problem is, the Zyurangers themselves don't seem all that cold. There's a little bit of snow, they build campfires but seem fine in the clothes they're wearing, and don't seek out any shelter. Because of that, it seems like an arbitrary way of ending the fight rather than an actual trial. This section plays quite differently in Teamwork. Obviously, Power Rangers is still having to backtrack from their early use of the Megazord in Episode 1. But since it is already established they have Zords, their appearance here feels a bit more organic. And if anything, Jason seems to have learned his lesson since they all individually call for their Zords, rather than assuming they'll all come at once. Well, everyone except Kimberly, that is. Hiroshi is present in the shot of May calling for her Pteranodon, so we get this funny sequence of 4 of the Rangers summoning their Zords, and then the pterodactyl just shows up on its own. Just like the first episode, Power Rangers pulls in a little footage from later episodes to show the 5 Dinozords combine into the Megazord tank mode, presumably to make it a little more plausible that this takes place after Day of the Dumpster. And rather than the Zord battle ending because the villain recalls her fighter, Zordon returns the Rangers to the command center because they're losing, and he wants to give them their weapons so they can hurry up and finish this episode. Or it's possible he wanted to recruit the Zyurangers since Geki and the others are clearly visible in this shot they pulled from later in the series. Finally, in Zyuranger, Dawn has the idea of simply using the Guardian Beasts to transport them to their destination, but the Beasts refuse, insisting this is something they have to do themselves. And that's because, if their Deus Ex Machina natures in the last 2 episodes didn't make it clear, the main difference between the Guardian Beasts of Zyuranger and the Dinozords of MMPR is that the Guardian Beasts are sentient, not simply robots. In fact, they can act independently. Since Boy and May are off on their own quest, they don't even pilot theirs in this story. Teamwork actually features a first for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, discounting the still overlays they used in Episode 1. It's the first time original footage is created for the morphed heroes. They don't do any fighting, it's mostly used for some brief cutaways, but most obviously they feature in the scene in the command center wherein Zordon gives the Rangers their weapons. It doesn't appear as though Zyurangers simply handed over their costumes though, as there are a few subtle differences. Their morphers, which are featured in every episode, read Power Rangers instead of Zyuranger Kyoryu Sentai. The American helmets have visible opening clasps on the side, which their Zyuranger counterparts lack, and for some reason the American necks are much bulkier. Also, as a handy clue, you're never going to catch Zyuranger footage where the characters talk into their wrist-mounted communicators. Finally, the weapons themselves serve slightly different purposes between each show. Unlike the Power Rangers, the Zyurangers have had melee weapons since the very beginning, which, up until now, they have only used when they're not transformed. These new versions can transform like the Zyurangers do, and fall in line with their aesthetic. And yeah, that's weird given how they're millions of years younger than the Zyurangers themselves. In Power Rangers, only this latter form is ever used, and the weapons are only brought out when the characters are morphed. I can understand why. While the regular weapons are designed to look old, they definitely look like real weapons and function like real weapons. I can't see Kimberly firing a swath of real arrows into a putty's face getting by either Saban or Fox. And it wouldn't make a lot of sense for Zack to carry an axe in his backpack to school every day. The stylized weapons are for the stylized fights. The actual teenagers fight hand to hand. However, the scene of the weapons transforming is cut down and used in Power Rangers, so if you look carefully, you can definitely make out the regular weapons. And since this footage is used in the opening sequence of all 60 episodes of Season 1, the regular weapons get a lot more airtime than they were meant to. Zyuranger wins out in the naming scheme though. Power Rangers is already starting to feel a little lazy simply tacking the word power onto things. I'll just close out by saying that Mothbreaker and Terra Arrow sound a lot cooler than Power Axe and Power Bow. I have nothing against Power Lance though. Even though it should be completely obvious, let's score these suckers. For story, I don't even feel like I need to say anything else. Land of Despair presents an epic quest. Teamwork barely manages to make a coherent regular episode. Zyuranger's plotting has some problems too, but nowhere near enough to keep it from winning. For characterization though, that's a bit tougher. Neither show features a character-centric plot this time around a la Trini and High Five, but at the same time, both shows do a decent job at establishing character. MMPR is a bit more overt with it. The fact that Alpha invites Zack to the command center simply for a social visit demonstrates there's a bond forming between these people that goes beyond a dispatcher sending out emergency services. And I don't care what anybody says, I love the idea of Zack's hip-hop Kido, combining martial arts and dance moves. This episode also introduces Angel Grove High School as well as Mr. Kaplan, the kid's ever-agitated principal. But on the other end of the spectrum, Bulk and Skull get a pointless, forgettable addition to their group this episode. I think she appears a total of one more time before being whisked off to the cornfields. Bulk and Skull work better as a duo. They don't need a gang. Over on Zyuranger, the effort is subtler, but for the first time the story slows down enough to give us a better handle on who these characters are. Don certainly continues to bring his impulsivity in full force. Geki gets to make impassioned speeches, and May falls into the role of the girl of the group as she's the one who nurtures and saves. At least it's something. I'm actually most impressed with how Goshi is handled. While he's not exactly a centerpiece here, it's how he operates in the background that leaves an impression. He's the one who introduces the book that starts the mission, he tries to hold back Don's worst impulses and often figures out solutions, and he's the one who's able to pull Geki out of his possession. There's a real sense that he's the rock of the group, no pun intended, and he serves well as second in command. It's really only with Boy I come out of this two-parter still not knowing who he is. Putting the characters through trials is a great way of teaching the audience who they are without resorting to a "this is my problem I must overcome this week" episode. So while it is close, Zyuranger wins this category as well. Finally, for action, Trini and Kimberly get some clever bits with some oil drums. But beyond that, the action here is a watered-down version of the action in the two-parter. It's missing a lot of the stunt work, traps, and adventure its Zyuranger counterparts feature, only able to show the bare minimum of what's left. It's not even close. Zyuranger wins. It achieves a clean sweep of all categories and, quite obviously, wins this contest. Next time on the all-new Mighty Morphin Zyurangers, we get another Zyuranger two-parter condensed into a single Power Rangers episode. It also focuses on the Guardian Beast joining together for the first time. I haven't compared them yet, but I have a feeling Power Rangers isn't going to do too hot on this one. But there's only one way to find out.